On this month's In the Life, the forbidden thrills of lesbian pulp.
You sort of try to sneak them past the guy at the cash register.
An unlikely 4, abandoned society for the jungles of Fiji.
We can do sports where you don't have to point your toes.
And Harvey dishes about his date.
Well, maybe after dinner.
Author E. Lynn Harris hosts In the Life, America's gay and lesbian news magazine.
Come on, Papa, what do you say?
Oh, that's marvelous.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by
the Ford Foundation, the Guild Foundation, the Arcus Foundation, the Lily Auchincloss Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, the Johnson Family Foundation, the Overbrook Foundation, the Pride Foundation, the Jeff Sora Fund of Stonewall Community Foundation, the Ted Snowden Foundation, the Reed Williams Foundation, Paul DeVito, Daniel H. Renberg, and Eugene Kapolowski, Jonathan Sheffer and Christopher Barley, MD.
And the annual support of In the Life members like you.
Welcome to In the Life. I'm Elin Harris. With underground institutions like the Harlem Coming Out Balls and Boston Marriages, gays and lesbians have long created spaces for ourselves in societies that don't automatically make space for us. We have now claimed rooms of our own in neighborhoods and novels, in sports and politics. In these places, what is personal becomes political. The very act of gays and lesbians claiming personal space makes that space a political territory. But we have built our homes, and over the course of the 20th century, we began to insist on being at home in the world. Tonight, on In the Life, Stealing Home. As activism gets personal in Maine.
My belief system does not accommodate that lifestyle.
Special guest Lesley Gore reads between the lines of lesbian pulp.
Twilight Lust and the Dark World of the Lesbian.
Some gay-on-gay action in the Boystown gentrification wars.
Even though that we were here first, it didn't matter.
It was really getting nasty.
And green-thumb lesbians put down roots in the traditional South.
So I said, Mother, I've been to these garden clubs. I don't think they would want me. She said, then you should start one for your own kind.
The gay rights movement depends upon spaces in which we can find communities and organize. Despite the Constitution's guarantee of freedom of assembly, it was not until after World War II that gay men and women were able to carve out a place to assemble. In New York City, vibrant scenes had flourished in the drag balls and salons of Harlem and the social clubs of Greenwich Village. But the post-war world saw the first few exclusively gay organizations forming: the Veterans Benevolent Association, the Manchin Society, and the Daughters of Bilitis, groups that sought to mobilize homosexuals in an era when the fundamental meeting space was the bar. However, only 50 of these organizations existed around the country before the night of June 28, 1969. But after that, thousands.
Gay Liberation Front was sort of, I guess, to be corny, it was the answer to a lot of people's prayers. I mean, it came out of nowhere, and it was gone before you really could say Gay Liberation Front. But what happened in that year and a half, changed so many lives. GLF was born, or no, literally, the first meeting, a group of people said, let's meet and see what we can do with the energy we have here from the riots.
Alternate University, a radical new school in Greenwich Village, offered unorthodox classes on everything from Marxism to karate. And on July 24th, less than a month after Stonewall, Alternate U became the birthplace of the GLF.
It became the place for their first dances, which was just unheard of, that you would publicize a homosexual dance.
But disagreements began on the very first night in the overcrowded room in Alternate U. Some women felt alienated and left to form radical lesbians. The trans community split off to found Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, and still others broke away and started the Gay Activist Alliance.
The founders of the Gay Activist Alliance, from their point of view, GLF was not sufficiently structured to get things done, and so they broke off and founded their own organization in December of 1969. They started talking really from the very beginning about needing to find some kind of alternative to the bars, which were seen as being syndicate-run, places that would encourage self-hate rather than an affirmation. So they managed to acquire an old firehouse on Worcester Street in Soho. And among other things, they started to dance every Saturday night. You would have maybe 1,000, almost all men, a few women, coming to dance at what was clearly a political organization. And indeed, there were times when they would hold demonstrations at 1 a.m. in the morning and literally take the entire dance to go harass the city council committee member who's giving us trouble.
Lesbian feminist liberation, LFL is what we called it, grew out of GLF, Gay Liberation Front, and GAA, Gay Activist Alliance, when the women felt that they needed to separate from the men. Lesbian women at that point really needed their own space. We met first at the firehouse and then moved from there to around Union Square and then eventually purchased one of the city buildings on 20th Street. And then were just social gathering places for women. And they were wonderful, and I miss that kind of space.
As black women, we didn't think our needs were being met. I'm not saying that they weren't doing the work, but they weren't doing the work. We needed something else. So, we got us a space, and we named ourselves Salsa Soul Sisters. We met at the Washington Square Methodist Church, and we met there for many years.
The Lesbian History Archives is a mixture of a museum and a family album. We have archival material and all the wonderful little things that lesbian women have collected all their lives. Back in the 1970s, we would bring people together to have a space to talk and get to know each other. I mean, this was back then when there really were very few spaces that women could go to do anything.
In 1983, many of these divergent political and social groups came together when community leaders acquired an old schoolhouse.
Like 300 organizations existed. There was a lot of activity, but it had no locus. Everybody was spread out in whatever found places they could be. It was such a powerful idea to say, we now can have a piece of real estate that's gay and lesbian owned. It's ours, nobody can take it away from us, and we have control over it.
One of the functions of the center is to create a common ground for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and AIDS activists.
Many organizations have been born here. There are some that people know better than others. Probably the most dramatic story is the birth of ACT UP, which happened in 1987 when Larry Kramer came.
He described what he saw as the epidemic in our community and put forth a call to action. And ACT UP was founded on that Tuesday night.
There are still people who think that this is a white man's organization. When they come in the building, they must see us here. This is a support for all people.
Our history and our culture needs a place to be born and then a place to grow so that we can find out who we are, how it started, how it began, where we came from, where we're going. And that, I think, is it. More than the buildings, but you need the buildings to do it.
When I was in college, I began both my life as a lesbian and my life in the theater. And it was very quickly made clear to me that those two things did not go together. The head of my theater department actually sat me down to explain to me at one point why he couldn't cast me by telling me that I just didn't convey any sexuality on stage. And so I moved to New York to make my way. Someone told me that I should go downtown to the East Village, which seemed very exotic to me at the time, and I should go see a show called Split Riches, which was completely sexy and funny, laugh out loud funny and heartbreaking, and it was so lesbian. It didn't even have to explain to you that it was lesbian. That changed my life. I'm Lisa Kron, and you're watching In the Life.
Special guest Lesley Gore revisits the lesbian literature of the Greenwich Village community before it began to organize itself.
In the 1950s, America was gripped in the vice of the Red Scare. In a world shaped by McCarthyism, rock and roll, and the suburb, an underground movement swept the aisles of the drugstore novel. Bold, lurid covers, titles like Dormitory Girls, Part-Time Les, Twilight Lust, and The Dark World of the Lesbian. These novels journeyed into secret subcultures and into desires that were forbidden, and a lot of fun. Desires so dangerous that the writers had to take pen names to protect their identities. One of these writers became known as the Queen of Lesbian Pulp. Anne Bannon's stories were urban tales of love and lust in Greenwich Village. Her books, like most of the genre, were marketed initially to men looking for a naughty thrill. But something quite different happened when girls discovered pulp.
Well, bless my soul, what's wrong with me? I'm itching like a man on a fuzzy tree. My friends say I'm acting wild as a bug. I'm in love. I'm all shook up.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Queen of Pulp, Anne Bannon.
Okay. Odd Girl Out. Okay, I'm going to read you a little bit of the first big love scene between two sorority sisters, Beth and Laura. Fresh from this experience myself, these two young women share a room, and they have discovered that they are really good friends. Beth murmured as Laura's hands began to trace the curves of her back. Oh, that's marvelous.
Many of the pulps were written by men and driven by sex and sales. In their stories, lesbians were evil or alien, and their lives were riddled with tragedy.
But women were writing romantic stories about women brave enough to buck the odds, to find each other, to make a life together in a period that was very hostile to that. I think that's why the women all around the country who had no other outlet loved them.
I don't know why, but I'm feeling so sad. I long to try something I've never had.
I got an awful lot of letters from women who, hard as it is to believe in the 21st century, really did not know that they were not isolated, freaky people. And it was very painful, very tough for them. And when these books came out, they were usually available on drugstore kiosks, at bus stations, at airports, at the train station. That was an adventure in itself, to have the courage to go up to a clerk in a drugstore with a couple of gay novels, and you'd slide them under the box of Kleenex and on top of the toothpaste. You sort of try to sneak them past the guy at the cash register. The character that I think probably is the most autobiographical is Beth Cullison. She is the beautiful senior in the sorority house in the original book, Odd Girl Out, with whom Laura falls in love. And many books later, having been married and had children, Beth finds the courage to break away from a handsome, successful young husband and come to New York, where she knows Laura is. What doesn't occur to her until she gets here is that Laura wasn't in the deep freeze while Beth was busy having kids and being married out in Pasadena. So it doesn't turn out as she thinks it will, but it turns out even better because she connects with Bebo Brinker. I didn't literally see Bebo Brinker walking around the streets of the village, but I wanted to see her. Greenwich Village had the same magnetic pull that the Castro came to have or that Paris in the 20s had. You had to get here.
It excited Bebo intensely, all that femininity. There was no shame, no shock, no self-consciousness about it all. They were enjoying themselves. They were having fun in the most natural way imaginable. They were all in love, or so it seemed. They were, what did Jack call it? Gay.
We lived in Philadelphia. I was newly married, and I would come up on the train and stay with friends up here. We were very frightened of the bars being raided, and we knew it would happen. And the last thing you wanted was to get hauled off in the paddy wagon and find your name the next morning in the paper. I mean, that would have been a disaster. I had children, a lot of women did. What a tremendous relief it was for me, who could not get out there and live a life, to live it through my own imagination. And to know this place well enough, I could capture a little bit of it and make it real for the women who were hungry for a connection.
A populace of now out and proud lesbians have rescued their pulps from the realm of the disposable dime store novel and transformed them into the treasured artifacts of a pivotal era.
I would have been very surprised if I had had any idea that I was, in a sense, writing a social history. But I think that's what the pulp fiction gave us. It was a perspective on a life that was just beginning to be a little more aware of itself as a community, and that's why it's kind of fun. It's a snapshot of what we were and where we got started after the great Second World War.
This December, I went to Hedrick Martin Institute for a tour. I've been wanting to get involved with them for a long time. And it's become more and more important to me to reach out to kids. And when I went there, I was waiting for the tour guide to show me around. And I was sitting and watching all the kids, and I was so blown away because here were all these very young kids, 13, 14, 15, and they were so themselves. Growing up in Ohio, I went to a Catholic school, and I was so closeted and so afraid of expressing myself in any way, as far as like the clothes that I wore, anything. And here are all these kids like completely themselves and very free and feeling very safe. And it made me feel so good. I actually started crying because I sat there and I watched and thought, God, if only all the kids in America or all the kids in the world could see this, and then they would know that they're not alone. I'm John Bartlett, and you're watching In the Life. The entire state population of Maine is less than that of New York's annual Gay Pride March. But in this rural landscape, activists now battle the Christian Coalition in their search for a new home, one bolstered by governmental protection.
Maine has the dubious distinction of being the only state in the Union where anti-discrimination ordinances that have been put in place at the state level have been overturned by referendum not once, but twice.
Maine Speak Out formed in 1995 in response to the first statewide referendum. That year, and again in the year 2000, Maine's politicians passed laws protecting gays and lesbians from discrimination in housing, public accommodation, and the workplace.
The mission of Maine Speak Out is to go out into the community and get conversations going about discrimination, about equal rights.
Volunteer speakers for Maine Speak Out now number close to 300.
We were afraid to walk hand in hand around this cove the way heterosexual couples do. It felt like we were back in the closet again.
We go to colleges, we go to civic groups, we will go anywhere.
The theory is that sharing personal stories will lead to a change in Maine and influence the next vote. While Maine's gay and lesbian activists have lost 2 statewide referendum battles, on the local level, they have seen some recent victories. In the small town of Westbrook, for example, voters recently kept in place laws protecting gays and lesbians.
And it was a volatile issue. Westbrook was an old mill town. Westbrook was important in Maine because Westbrook is the home of the Christian Coalition here in Maine. So basically, we defeated the Christian Coalition in their own backyard.
I founded the Christian Coalition of Maine in 1992.
As the head of Maine's Christian Coalition, Paul Volley spearheaded the 2 referendums that overturned the non-discrimination laws. He succeeded by rallying voters from hundreds of conservative churches across the central and northern parts of the state. Volley charges that laws specifically protecting gays and lesbians unfairly override his right to not associate with them.
People of Christian faith can have a Christian business or be renting property, and suddenly the law says, well, your faith doesn't count as much anymore. Now you have to hire somebody, or now you have to rent to somebody, and saying, well, wait a minute, why do I have to give a special consideration to someone who's exercising a lifestyle? If I had a rental property, I would knowingly rent to an unmarried couple, a heterosexual couple, because my belief system does not accommodate that lifestyle.
Everyone has refuted that argument of special rights that the Christian right puts out there.
Karen Garrity was president of the Maine Lesbian and Gay Political Alliance before becoming the mayor of Portland.
Our Attorney General has written an opinion about the inequalities under Maine law for gay people. Our governor has spoken out on it. All of our mainstream religious leaders, our business leaders. We are the only state in New England not to have statewide protections.
It's a spiritual battle with me. I'm a born-again Christian. I take the Word of God as a literal. When he says it's an abomination, it's a sin, a man should not lie with a man or a woman with a woman, and so forth. I take that to be truthful.
Reverend Eric Kelly of Portland's Williston West Church takes issue with Paul Volley's application of Christian values.
Judeo-Christian scripture, bottom line, deals with accepting people, and none of us should stand in judgment over anybody else. This church plays a vital role in helping people to see a normal church family coming together that is comprised of gay couples, lesbian couples, heterosexual couples. We need to all walk towards a day, particularly in religious organizations, when we say that everybody is welcome, we mean that everybody is welcome.
Whether or not it becomes a reality, gay rights laws, I'm true to my beliefs.
But perhaps surprisingly, Volley predicts that the Christian Coalition will eventually lose in Maine on the question of protection for gay men and lesbians.
In the coastal areas, all up the coast, interior of the state, the people don't want it. And what's happened over the years is the coastal areas are growing faster because a lot of people from out of state with more liberal views coming from New York and Connecticut and Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and that seems to be the tipping of the balance. That's why, in all probability, the gay rights laws will pass in Maine. Wouldn't like it. But there are all sorts of things, all sorts of laws that are in, no matter what state you go to, you may not like, but you still live with them.
We've worked hard in our land to right injustices as we have struggled together.
Reverend Kelly may have found something that he and Paul Volley agree on.
We're going to win. I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to be, at least for the near future, it's going to be a town-by-town kind of a process. But it will happen.
And I suspect there will also be further attempts to pass a statewide law, and I think that there's real energy and effort behind that. Even though there have been 2 losses, I think people's perception is you just keep doing it until you get there.
The main thing that you have to remember if you're in any kind of civil rights work is to keep a big picture mentality. The change is not going to occur in a year, 2 years, or 3 years. It's going to occur in 10 years. The real change that you want.
Hi, I'm Ripa, and you're very smart because you're watching In the Life.
Still to come on In the Life, A Tale of Two Cities.
Residents don't want to be necessarily involved in the hubbub of a vibrant commercial strip.
We call ourselves Mayberry with an attitude.
The dangerous lives of gay athletes in Fiji.
The waterfall was 400 feet high, and there were 3 sections of ropes.
And Harvey Fierstein meets the perfect match.
Cute butt, too.
Next, a clash within a community. Chicago's Lakeview thrived when gay men moved in and gentrified the area into Boystown. But now, the neighborhood's very prosperity is pushing its gay businesses out.
This is Chicago's North Halsted Street. Some say it has the country's highest concentration of gay-owned and operated businesses. Affectionately known as Boys Town, gay men and lesbians from the world over visit the strip for experiences they can write home about. And they spend money. Some $350 million a year is pumped into the city's economy by this neighborhood alone. Mayor Daley has praised the street's diversity and marked it with these rainbow pillars. But the businesses are worried. The neighborhood is changing, and they feel threatened.
Welcome, welcome.
Sean Smith runs a bed and breakfast on Halsted Street in the heart of Boystown. He says despite how 9/11 affected tourism in the rest of the city, business along the street has been good.
Halsted is a trophy street nationwide. I mean, and I get a lot of people here from Europe too, London. They love Chicago. We've been doing well, knock on wood, and hope to continue to.
LGBT travelers stay longer and spend more money than the typical visitor. The draw? The concentration of more than 20 clubs, along with a variety of retail stores and novelty shops.
The traveler that comes to Chicago is somewhat spoiled because you don't need a car, and you can literally visit, 8 to 10 of these bars in one evening, which is nice. And just, like they like to say, stumble home from the bars and not worry about taking a cab or anything, and it's very safe.
And Halsted years ago was not a nice place, was not a place you'd want to walk down at night.
Resident Rick Ingram has been involved in the neighborhood for 20 years. He says that the $3.5 million the city spent on the look of the street was just the finishing touches on what LGBT businesses spent years creating.
It's concrete and it's pylons and it's streetscaping, but it's much more than that. It really is the recognition that the city gave to all the work that's been done.
But the community may be the victim of its own success. Developers now see profits in selling high-end condominiums along the entertainment strip.
Residents move in, they like it quiet. They don't want to be necessarily involved in the hubbub of a vibrant commercial strip, and those conflicts threaten the commercial district quite significantly.
Businessmen and residents worked together when this condo was built next to a gay bathhouse, but when another condo was built next to this late-night dance club, the new residents complained.
Even though that we were here first, it didn't matter.
Mike Maciarello owns Circuit Nightclub. He spends a lot of his time now monitoring sound levels, ever since his new neighbors protested to the city.
We were taken to the liquor commissioner, and we had to sit in front of the liquor commissioner and listen from him.
He told Maciarello to make his neighbors happy, turn down the music. Maciarello, knowing his liquor license was in jeopardy, complied, but not without consequences.
Yes, it did affect our business, and I believe that if we can't make it, then it's somewhat of a domino effect with a larger club, and then it could really happen to anyone.
And it was really polarizing, but it was really getting nasty.
Circuit is in Alderman Helen Schiller's ward. After inheriting the problem from another alderman, she's been leading discussions between Circuit and the condo owners.
I learned a lot about planning, and I learned a lot about building community, because we had to get to a point. We had to start at a point of building trust. We couldn't go anywhere if the trust wasn't there.
One solution is letting Circuit move its dance floor to another part of their building, away from the condo. Another is a city ordinance restricting further development. But it's too late for this project, with its balconies overlooking another one of Halstead's popular late-night clubs.
The concern is that those residents that buy in are going to have the same problem that the people up the street had on that club, and that there'll be the same types of conflicts, and that's a real problem.
Not so, says the first one to buy into the new structure. B&B owner Smith likes the locale and thinks investing on Halstead is smart. He advocates educating prospective neighbors on the character of the street.
I'll be living in there, and I want to tell them, you know, what's going to be happening. And obviously we'll have a board, and I'd like to be on that and bring a little common sense to the table.
That's not to say that he doesn't think the bars have responsibilities.
You don't want loitering in front of a bar at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's time to go home, you know. So that's up to the bar owner to take care of that.
There is one development along Halstead that everyone seems to welcome, the creation of an LGBT community center.
We think of it as really being a draw for people, something that brings people to a particular area, and something that keeps people in the area over the long term. And we think Center on Halstead is going to be a true anchor for the street of Halstead itself.
With approximately 95,000 square feet for cultural, sporting, and community events, it will be the largest center of its kind in the country. Circuit's owner is eager to welcome it to the neighborhood.
The center on Halstead Street is an incredible thing for Halstead Street and for the community. I was very, very excited to see that the city of Chicago paid attention to the community enough to invest into our future.
And while that future unfolds, Chicago's LGBT community will be staying to help shape it.
Some of those folks worked for 20 years or more to make that street what it is. They took that street back from street gangs and boarded up buildings to make it a vibrant business community. And I don't think they're about to sit down and sit aside and let that thing go down and be overrun by residences.
700 miles from Chicago and deep in the heart of Dixie is Decatur, Georgia. Generally considered a suburb of Atlanta, residents say the city has cultivated its own unique history, culture, and identity. And while it may look like many small southern towns, Decatur, or Dyke Acres as it's sometimes called, has one of the highest concentrations of same-sex couples in the country. Meet Sherry Sinclair. She moved to Decatur in 1987. Like Daley in Chicago, Decatur's mayor valued the gay community, sowing the seeds of diversity in an otherwise hostile southern soil. And it was cheaper than Atlanta.
This became an enclave for lesbians because housing was affordable. We could move here, do the garden, and and manage to live here.
While her garden was always a comfort, in the early 90s, Sinclair was worn out from fighting for LGBT rights in a reluctant state. As a diversion, her mother suggested she join a garden club.
So I said, Mother, I've been to these garden clubs. I don't think they would want me. And so after a long pause, she said, then you should start one for your own kind.
Sherry! Oh, where's the wine?
And that's how the Digging Dykes of Decatur was born.
The garden club is an anti-garden club. It's the antithesis of a garden club. It's the opposite of what a traditional garden club would be.
Nothing is impossible to the woman who wants to lead a full life and courageously proceeds to do so.
While the members of the club spoof Southern gentility, they are also keenly aware of the importance of their rural roots.
Decatur is such a unique city because it's a small town in a big city. I grew up in a small town, and I love being able to call my city commissioner or walk by her house or talk to the mayor.
We call ourselves a cross between Mayberry and Berkeley, or Mayberry with an attitude.
Keisha Cunningham is, in fact, Sinclair's city commissioner.
My official handle is the first openly gay African American to be elected in the Southeast.
Drawing a comparison to Boystown's concentration of businesses, Cunningham points out that Decatur has the highest concentration of residents in Georgia, some 18,004 square miles. Its population is 55% white, 45% black, and 3% of all couples are in same-sex relationships, the 5th highest concentration of same-sex couples in the country.
I'd be very gay here. I think I can be as gay as I want to here. The LGBT community is part of the fabric and fiber of who Decatur is.
That may seem unusual for a city surrounded by churches, but members of the LGBT community say that's because they're more into nesting than the clubbing found in Boystown.
We're just more of a family-oriented community in general.
Lynn Pasqualetti moved here 20 years ago and opened her own business. She liked the reception she and her family received.
Every Saturday night during the spring and the fall, it's families all over the place. And it's gay, straight, black, white, young, old, male, female, all kind of commingling together, which is really nice.
Now she and her partner are raising their 3rd child, Daniel, and have recently built their dream home. It looks more like a house in the country than a city.
Even though you're in a big city, you really don't get that big city feel. So quality of life here to me is just incredible.
Although limited, there is nightlife in Decatur. Eddie's Attic is popular for showing off homegrown musical talent.
You guys have any questions right now about anything? Or to decide on a wine?
And for fine dining, there is Watershed, actually part owned by homegrown artist Emily Salyers of Indigo Girls. And unlike Chicago, Decatur officials and businesses have been encouraging downtown residential housing, seeing foot traffic as essential to further development.
That it means for us a mix of commercial and residential, nice nightlife, good restaurants, and a very strong piece of that is going to be the LGBT community.
Others worry about traffic jams, parking problems, and affordability.
If you're a lesbian and you're working class or you're making a modest income, no, it's not better. You can't afford to live here. You can't afford to pay the taxes.
Oh, yes, we are the leading dykes of Decatur. We grow tomatoes, we till the land.
But the digging dykes of Decatur are proud of their gardens and their homes, even if they're not in Mayberry anymore.
Oh, ain't we grand?
One of the moments I will never forget was the Ellen Coming Out episode, which I watched with a group of friends when I was in college. And I remember about 3 or 4 of us gathering in one dorm room. And by the time the show started, we had about 10 or 11 people in there of all persuasions and ethnicities. I remember when she finally got to the big line, which was, "I'm gay, period, nothing else," we were all silent. We didn't all burst into applause, but I watched the faces of, the people who are not gay in the room. And it was a silence not of shock or fear or disgust, but recognition. And it was a very important moment. I'm Christopher Rice, and you're watching In the Life. What's left once we have claimed spaces in neighborhoods, in fiction and activism? Fiji. In October 2002, this remote South Pacific island became the site for Eco Challenge, a grueling adventure expedition race. 4-person teams journeyed through 500 kilometers of rugged terrain, so rugged, in fact, that only 10 of the 82 teams that entered Eco Challenge in 2002 crossed the finish line. One of the 82 was Team Ego Subaru. This all-gay team of middle-aged athletes raced through the jungles of Fiji and onto televisions across America.
Well, we started off with 300 and something other folks, and we were just in a big crowd.
At the starting line, we had no maps. We didn't know what we were going to have to do.
It's like you're thrown in hell.
The wonderful thing about Eco Challenge is that you're stripped naked emotionally, whatever happens, good or bad, that there's no fake in it. I'm Roger McFarland. I'm captain of Team Eco Subaru.
It's 2 Californians, Susan, myself, and 2 people from New York, Roger and Alana.
Pamela and Susan, their role was to be the more experienced, ordering gear, scheduling, collecting intelligence, training, advice in various disciplines.
Roger's tall. He's 8-9 feet tall, and he is special.
Alana's a freak of nature. She's 51, but she really has better endurance and better strength, sport-specific strengths than I do.
I think our team's strength is that we are all very mature on this team, that we have all gone through a lot of things in life.
Well, I never in a million years thought at 47 I'd be on this course, but God, does it feel wonderful to have this chance.
Subaru laid out the $70,000 cost for the team to compete.
I guess the interest with our team is that we're all gay. And honestly, it's just a common thread that brings us together.
I think that makes it different.
We can do sports where you don't have to point your toes. We know gay kids have suffered from organized sports over the years, both women being forced into the closet and denying it, and guys, being brutalized by it, frankly.
Pamela's been my partner. We've been partners for I think 19 years. I think we race really well together. We take care of each other. We watch out for each other on the course, and it's very special. Did I say that right?
I can't imagine racing without her on the team because it's just such a natural thing for us to do.
Women, and 3 women particularly, a female majority, solves problems differently. We approach conflict differently. There's a lot more mutual support, and it's a lot easier to ask for help.
Those team dynamics are critical in a physical race with intense psychological demands.
It's physically hard, it's scary, it's designed to throw curves at you psychologically.
In this kind of race and this kind of difficulty, that anything could happen, and you might lose a teammate.
It's so difficult working between teams and within teams. It's an epic challenge.
Here we are, checkpoint 1, we made it. Just a few more to go.
At checkpoint 1, Team Eco Subaru and a group of Fijians worked together to build a Billy Billy.
These are the friendliest people in the entire world. They offered, and we gratefully accepted.
This Billy Billy thing started in the, 3, 4 in the afternoon, and we went straight till 1 or 2 in the morning, and you have to stand, you can't sit on this thing.
The team's opportunity came after a grueling year of training and the loss of Roger's brother David to AIDS.
When I see what he did, the way he cared for his brother, the respect he had for him till the end, this is really minor compared to that.
That was a really daunting year for me, a heartbreaking, backbreaking year for me. Then I was right off to Fiji. I had obligations.
But an injury pulled Roger out of the race and disqualified Team Eco Subaru. We were walking down a perfectly flat dirt road when I lost feeling and motor control in one leg. That was accompanied by a lot of pain, and it became more and more difficult to walk over several miles, to the point eventually where I could not walk at all. I frankly thought I'd had a stroke. It wasn't a stroke, but the delayed fallout from earlier injury.
He fell through one of the billies, got onto his butt. Keen to get him x-rayed and get him off the course as soon as possible.
And the 3 women journeyed on, sleeping 3 hours a night until the 7th day, when 150 miles into the race, they reached Vuwa Falls.
We get finally to the waterfall, and we make the cutoff. The waterfall was 400 feet high, and there were 3 sections of ropes.
But torrential rains made the falls too dangerous to climb. Eco Subaru and 29 other teams were pulled out of the race.
It's like everything that happens in life every day, but compressed in 7 days, but really to the extreme of everything.
Now I look back on it, and Dave's death certainly put it in perspective. This is not AIDS, this is not cancer, this is not poverty, this is not oppression, this is not war, this is a race you choose to go to. All of that energy, examining yourself, most middle-aged people don't get a chance to act that out.
It was like a whole renewal somehow. I felt I was stripped of everything, and it was down to the essence of who I was, and I came back with that, and now there's a whole new life to build.
Eco Challenge airs on USA Network.
In 1977, ABC announced the debut of its primetime satire, Soap. But before Soap had even begun to air, its gay character, Jody Dallas, played by Billy Crystal, sparked a massive controversy, provoking boycotts by groups as disparate as the National Gay Task Force and the National Federation for Decency. Jody, for the record, is a gay transvestite who looks just marvelous in his mother's gowns and who tries to undergo a sex change operation so that he can stay with his pro-football boyfriend, but instead the boys break up. He slips into a one-night stand with a woman, fathers a child, and after undergoing a legal battle, wins custody rights, making Jody Dallas in 1980 the first openly gay parent on primetime television. I'm Pamela Sneed, and you're watching In the Life.
Next month on In the Life, the fundamental fight. The ex-gay movement wants you.
And I believe Christ has the power to change people.
A jihad within the Nation of Islam.
Religion has been hijacked.
And children's books get caught in an adult battle.
They are now in my possession, and librarian, you're not getting them back.
All this and more on In the Life, America's gay and lesbian news magazine. And finally, In the Life's Harvey Fierstein walks out of the stage door and into the dating game.
So what happened was, these words are making me nervous. This is not funny. What happened was, you're in my key light. Well, so far that's not offensive. Come on, Papa, what do you say? I met a guy out of nowhere. How do you like that? I haven't been dating lately. Sort of been busy with stuff, out of the loop. And truthfully, Valentine may have been a saint, but the last guy I dated was not. I needed a breather. Then from nowhere came this guy. He was standing out front of my theater, a few feet from a crowd of people waiting for autographs. I don't know why anyone waits in the cold for autographs. You can't give them away on eBay. Anyway, our eyes met and I said to him, "So what are you standing all the way back there for? Don't you want one?" To which he replied, "Well, maybe after dinner." Perhaps it was the twinkle in his eyes or his smile that could charm a meter maid, but it was a done deal for me. Cute butt, too. He followed that brief encounter with a letter, and then we shared a few phone calls, and before you could say domestic partnership, we'd settled on a date for dinner. The day of our big date, I got a call from a friend. He was a mess. His lover of 18 years had announced he was leaving. He'd grown tired of their life together and wanted to explore alternate lifestyles. Didn't we used to be an alternate lifestyle? Well, this guy wanted to find fulfillment via tattoos, multiple piercings, and showers in a rainbow of colors. My friend was inconsolable. I was disgusted. Not an hour later, I heard from another friend who that very night was to celebrate his one-year anniversary, but his boyfriend decided he needed some space and signed up for a 2-year stint tap dancing on a cruise ship. It got me thinking about other couples in my realm, like the lesbian who'd recently borrowed my car to take her partner to an upstate rehab, and another pal who was no longer available for movie nights because she had personal therapy once a week, couples therapy once a week, group therapy once a week, and her mother-in-law once a week, which pretty much cut enjoyment down to once a month if she was lucky. Then I know this gent who recently discovered his lover was having an office affair. Not one of those online jobbies either, but one involving real live inter-office memorandum. Another guy I know has a partner who ran their phone bill to $800 thanks to a newly developed fondness for phone sex. And I could go on and on with infidelities, pending divorces, and looming rejections. Still, I do know one couple who are exceedingly happy. But that's only because they have no idea what the other one is up to. If they knew what I knew, there'd be no domesticity in that partnership. And lest you think I am only bashing gay pairings, let me say that my straight friends put forth an endless fount of complaints about lack of sex, lack of income, lack of housebreaking, and lack of sanity. My own personal permanent dating record is filled to overflowing with survived disaster. Oh, how fondly I recall one particularly unpleasant breakup. I was so completely miserable that a friend took me by the shoulders. Look out the window. There's a fabulous world out there, a world of places to travel and jobs to try and friends to make and strangers to meet and museums to visit and shows to see and parks to wander and lakes to swim. There's an entire world of possibilities right outside of your window. But you are acting as if the entire world is a big pile of dog doo just because one person isn't behaving the way you want them to. Well, I replied, isn't that proof that I'm really in love? Or, as Marilyn Monroe and Miss Jane, I don't need no stinking Silicon Russell sang, when love goes wrong, nothing goes right. I took a look at myself in the mirror. What was I doing? I'm healthy. My family is healthy. I have a great job. All in all, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And I was preparing to go out and do what? I put away my dress clothes. I called up Mr. Blue Eyes and made some lame excuse, and instead settled in for an evening at home with my tried and true, never let me down partner, comforted in the knowledge that should anything ever go bad between us, a new VCR is just a short shopping trip away. Next time I might even upgrade to a DVD. I'm man enough to handle it. Now, if only video rentals came with flowers.
I'm Elin Harris. For all of us at In the Life here at the National Arts Club in New York, thank you for watching. We'll see you next month.
When you're
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by
the Ford Foundation, the Gill Foundation, the Arcus Foundation, the Lily Auchincloss Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, the Johnson Family Foundation, the Overbrook Foundation, the Pride Foundation, the Jeff Sora Fund of Stonewall Community Foundation, the Ted Snowden Foundation, the Reed Williams Foundation, Paul DeVito, Daniel H. Renberg and Eugene Kapolowski, Jonathan Sheffer and Christopher Barley, MD.
and the annual support of In the Life members like you.